The sun was setting over the suburban neighborhood, casting warm, golden hues across the tree-lined streets. Maya Johnson, a well-dressed woman in her mid-40s, walked calmly toward her car, her leather briefcase swinging lightly by her side. She had just finished dinner with an old friend who lived nearby and was reflecting on the meaningful conversation they'd shared. For Maya, moments like these were rare and cherished. Opportunities to step away from her courtroom and the heavy weight of justice she carried daily. As she approached her vehicle, a sleek black sedan, she noticed a patrol car parked a few yards away. Two officers, Daniels and Smith, sat inside, their eyes locked on her every move. Maya, a judge well-versed in the ways of the world, felt the familiar sting of suspicion creep up her spine. She could sense it before they even stepped out of the car, the weight of judgment, the narrowing of assumptions based solely on the color of her skin. Officer Daniels, a tall man with a squared jaw and an air of arrogance, exited the car first. His partner, Officer Smith, followed, his movements less confident but equally deliberate. They walked toward her with calculated steps, their uniforms immaculate but their intentions anything but. "Ma'am," Daniels began, his tone clipped, "can I ask what you're doing in this neighborhood?" Maya paused, turning to face them. Her calm demeanor never wavered as she met Daniels' sharp gaze. "I just finished visiting a friend," she replied evenly, her voice steady. "Is there a problem, officers?" Daniels crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. Mind telling us who this friend is and why you're here?" Maya's brows furrowed slightly. "I don't see how that's relevant," she said, "but if it puts your mind at ease, my friend is Elaine Carter. She lives at 142 Maple Drive. You're welcome to check." Smith, standing slightly behind Daniels, smirked faintly. "Nice car you've got there," he said, gesturing toward her vehicle. "Doesn't seem like it belongs around here." Maya's lips pressed into a thin line. "Is that so? Well, officer, I assure you it's mine. Would you like to see the registration?" Daniels took a step closer, his tone growing colder. "You seem awfully defensive. If you've got nothing to hide, why not cooperate? Let's see some ID." With a quiet sigh, Maya set down her briefcase and reached into her handbag, retrieving her wallet. She handed over her driver's license, her fingers brushing against the edges of her judicial ID, which she deliberately left concealed. Daniels examined her license, his brow furrowing as he read her name. "Johnson, haha," he muttered. "What brings someone like you to this part of town?" Maya's patience was wearing thin, but she kept her composure. "As I said, I was visiting a friend. Now, if you're done profiling me, I'd like to get home." Daniels chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "Profiling? Ma'am, we're just doing our job. Suspicious behavior doesn't get a free pass, no matter how expensive your outfit looks." Smith leaned in slightly. Maybe we should check her car just to be sure. You never know what people are hiding." "That won't be necessary," Maya said firmly, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "Unless you have reasonable suspicion of a crime, I suggest you let me be on my way." Daniel's jaw tightened, his pride clearly wounded by her refusal to cower. He glanced at Smith, then back at Maya. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be," he said. "Step aside while we take a look." Maya stood her ground. "You have no legal basis to search my car, officers. If you insist, I'll be forced to report this as harassment." The tension crackled in the air, the standoff drawing out as Daniel's frustration mounted. Finally, he snapped. "Fine, but don't think this is over. We'll be keeping an eye on you." He tossed her license back to her, the plastic card spinning in the air before Maya caught it gracefully. Without another word, the officers turned and strode back to their patrol car, their indignation palpable. Maya exhaled slowly, her grip tightening on her briefcase. She had faced countless moments like this in her life, moments where her dignity and resolve were tested, but this time felt different. This time she would ensure justice wasn't just a concept discussed in courtrooms, it would be served. As she slid into her car and started the engine, Maya glanced in her rearview mirror, watching the patrol car linger before finally driving away. Her mind was already turning, her instincts as sharp as ever. Something told her this encounter was far from over. Little did the officers know, the woman they had just harassed was not only a judge but a fierce advocate for justice, a woman unafraid to hold the powerful accountable no matter their rank. And soon they would learn the true weight of their actions in the most unexpected way possible. The next morning, Maya Johnson stood in her kitchen pouring a fresh cup of coffee. She stared out of the window at the sunlit garden, her mind still replaying the encounter from the previous night. The officers' smug expressions, their thinly veiled contempt. It was all too familiar. Yet, this time, Maya felt an unshakable sense of purpose. She didn't know how or when, but she would see justice served. She checked the time and grabbed her briefcase, heading out the door to her car. As she approached, she noticed something odd: a patrol car parked down the street. Her eyes narrowed as she recognized the same vehicle from the previous night. Inside sat Officers Daniels and Smith, their attention fixed squarely on her. Maya sighed, her frustration simmering beneath her calm exterior. She got into her car, started the engine and pulled out of the driveway, deliberately ignoring the patrol car. But as she drove down the street, the flashing red and blue lights suddenly came to life. "Here we go," she muttered, pulling over to the curb. Daniels and Smith stepped out of their car, their expressions a mix of arrogance and misplaced authority. Daniels approached the driver's side window while Smith lingered behind, his hand resting on his holster. "Morning, ma'am," Daniels said, leaning down with a condescending smirk. "We couldn't help but notice your vehicle matches the description of one involved in some suspicious activity." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious activity? Involving what exactly?" Daniels waved a hand dismissively. "Don't worry about the details. Step out of the car, please." Maya's jaw tightened, but she complied, stepping out with her briefcase in hand. "Officers, I'm going to need you to clarify your reasoning, otherwise this feels a lot like harassment." Smith chimed in, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Big words for someone under investigation." Daniels reached for her briefcase. "Mind if we take a look in here?" "Yes, I do mind," Maya said firmly. "You have no warrant, and I haven't consented to a search." Daniels chuckled darkly. "You're awfully sure of yourself, aren't you? Let's see how sure you are at this station." Without another word, he snapped a pair of handcuffs around her wrists, ignoring her protests. Maya remained calm, though her heart pounded with indignation. She knew they had no grounds for this arrest, and she intended to make them regret every second of it. As they escorted her to the patrol car, neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, their eyes wide with curiosity. Maya felt the weight of their stares but kept her head high, refusing to let humiliation take root. She climbed into the back seat, her composure unshaken. At the station, Maya was led into a holding cell, the cold metal of the handcuffs biting into her wrists. Daniels leaned against the bars, his smug grin returning. "So, you've got quite the attitude. Think you're above the law or something?" Maya met his gaze, her expression cool and collected. "No, Officer Daniels, I believe in the law. That's why I know you've just made a serious mistake." Daniels' smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "Keep telling yourself that, lady." Smith joined him, glancing at Maya with a mix of disdain and unease. What's she even doing in a neighborhood like that anyway? Probably thought she could get away with something. Maya didn't respond. She simply sat on the bench, her thoughts racing. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had been profiled, harassed, or mistreated by those sworn to protect and serve. And now, she had a chance to make it right. Hours later, Maya was released without explanation, her belongings unceremoniously dumped into a plastic bag. Daniels handed her the bag, his smug grin still firmly in place. "Looks like you got lucky this time." Maya took her things, her expression unreadable. "Luck had nothing to do with it," she said quietly, walking past him without another glance. As she left the station, the weight of the day settled over her, but even as frustration and anger bubbled beneath the surface, Maya felt a quiet determination take hold. She knew the law inside and out, and she knew how to wield it. The officer's arrogance would soon meet its match. That evening, Maya sat in her study, the warm glow of a desk lamp illuminating the neatly organized files before her. She opened her laptop and began drafting a report, detailing every moment of her encounter with Daniels and Smith. Dates, times, and exact words, they were all there, meticulously documented. This wasn't just about filing a complaint, this was about building a case, laying the groundwork for what was to come. Maya's phone buzzed on the desk and she glanced at the screen. It was a message from her mentor, Judge Evelyn Carter. "Heard about your encounter today. I hope you're okay. Remember, the best way to fight injustice is to let the law speak for you." Maya smiled faintly, her resolve strengthening. She typed back a quick response. "I'm more than okay. Justice is on its way." Little did Daniels and Smith know, the woman they had arrested was no ordinary citizen. She was a judge, a woman who had spent her entire career fighting for equality and fairness, and soon they would find themselves standing before her, their fates hanging in the balance. A week had passed since Maya's unjust arrest. During that time, she worked tirelessly behind the scenes, collecting the evidence she needed. She filed an official complaint against Officers Daniels and Smith, submitting not only her written statement but also video footage captured by a neighbor's security camera. The footage clearly showed the officers' unwarranted behavior, from their initial stop to her unlawful arrest. Maya knew the wheels of justice turned slowly, but she also knew how to make them turn in her favor. Thanks to her position as a judge, her complaint had been expedited for review. The Oversight Committee found the evidence compelling enough to launch an investigation, and within days Daniels and Smith were placed on administrative leave, pending a hearing. The day of the hearing arrived and the courtroom was packed. Media coverage of the incident had drawn significant attention, sparking discussions about systemic bias and police accountability. Maya sat at the judge's bench, her black robe flowing around her as she prepared for the proceedings. She hadn't revealed her role in the case to the public yet. The officers and their legal team were still unaware of the identity of the presiding judge. Daniels and Smith entered the courtroom, their confident swagger noticeably diminished. Dressed in their uniforms, they sat at the defense table, flanked by their attorney, a middle-aged man with a perpetually furrowed brow. The bailiff's voice rang out, silencing the murmurs in the gallery. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Maya Johnson." Daniels and Smith exchanged puzzled glances, but they stood along with everyone else. As Maya stepped into view, her expression calm but commanding, the two officers' faces turned a shade paler. "Please be seated," Maya said, her voice steady as she took her place behind the bench. She allowed him a moment of silence to stretch before addressing the room. "This is a disciplinary hearing concerning officers Daniels and Smith, charged with misconduct, racial profiling, and unlawful arrest. I've reviewed the evidence and test." Daniels shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier arrogance replaced by visible unease. Smith avoided eye contact entirely, staring at the table as if willing it to swallow him whole. The prosecution, representing the Oversight Committee, began by presenting the video footage. The courtroom watched as the security camera captured the officers stopping Maya's car, their condescending attitudes unmistakable. The footage also included audio, revealing Daniels' sarcastic remarks and Smith's dismissive tone. Maya kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a deep sense of validation. The truth was laid bare for all to see. The prosecutor concluded their argument with a pointed statement. This footage, combined with Judge Johnson's testimony, makes it clear that officers Daniels and Smith abused their authority. Their actions were not only unlawful but also a stark example of the systemic biases that undermine public trust in law enforcement. When it was the defense's turn, their attorney attempted to shift the narrative. He argued that the officers had acted in good faith, claiming they had reason to suspect criminal activity in the area. Daniels finally spoke, his voice lacking the confidence it once carried. "We were just doing our jobs, we didn't know she was a judge." Maya's eyes narrowed and she leaned forward slightly. "Your Honor," she interrupted, her tone measured but firm, "whether or not I'm a judge is irrelevant. What matters is that you judged me solely based on my appearance. Would you have acted the same way if I had been a white woman in the same neighborhood?" Daniels hesitated, his mouth opening and closing as he searched for an answer. Smith remained silent, his guilt written all over his face. Maya continued, her voice ringing clear across the room. "Law enforcement is entrusted with the power to protect and serve, not to profile and harass. Your behavior that day wasn't just an abuse of authority, it was a betrayal of the trust placed in you by the community." As the hearing progressed, it became clear that the defense had no leg to stand on. The evidence was overwhelming, and the officers' inability to justify their actions only cemented their guilt. The jury deliberated for a brief hour before returning with a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. Maya felt a wave of relief, though she maintained her composed demeanor. As the courtroom fell silent, she delivered her sentencing. "Officers Daniels and Smith," she began, her voice firm but measured. "You have been found guilty of misconduct, racial profiling, and unlawful arrest. Your actions reflect not only poorly on yourselves but also on the institution you represent. This court sentences you to mandatory community service, racial sensitivity training, and a 6-month suspension without pay. Additionally, your records will reflect this misconduct." Daniels opened his mouth to protest, but Maya silenced him with a sharp look. "You may think this punishment is harsh, but consider it an opportunity to reflect on your actions and grow as individuals. The law is meant to serve justice, not perpetuate prejudice. I hope this experience serves as a wake-up call." After the sentencing, the courtroom emptied, leaving Maya alone at the bench. She removed her robe, folding it neatly over her arm, and let out a deep breath. The day had been exhausting but also fulfilling. Justice had been served, not just for her but for every person who had been profiled or mistreated. As she exited the courthouse, reporters swarmed her with questions, cameras flashing in her face. Maya raised a hand to silence them. Today's verdict isn't about me, she said, her voice steady. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of race, gender, or status, is treated with the respect and dignity they deserve. Justice isn't just an idea, it's a responsibility. She walked away, her head held high, ready to continue her fight for equality and fairness in the justice system. That evening, Maya returned home, the weight of the day still lingering on her shoulders. She kicked off her heels and sank into her favorite chair by the window. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the heavy darkness she'd carried during her youth. Tonight, she allowed herself a moment to reflect on the path that had brought her here. Maya's journey had been anything but easy. Growing up in a modest neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, she'd learned early on that life wasn't fair. Her father, a postal worker, and her mother, a school teacher, had always emphasized the importance of education and resilience. They often told her, "Maya, you're going to have to work twice as hard and be twice as good just to get half as far. But don't let that stop you." Those words had become her mantra, fueling her determination to rise above the systemic barriers she faced. As a teenager, Maya excelled in school, earning scholarships to prestigious programs, but the discrimination she experienced wasn't confined to her childhood. During law school, professors underestimated her, peers excluded her, and internship opportunities mysteriously vanished when she walked into interviews. Maya remembered one particularly painful incident during her first year of law school. She had been selected to represent her class in a mock trial competition, a prestigious honor. But her opposing team, led by a privileged student named Brandon, had ridiculed her throughout the trial. During a break, she overheard Brandon joking with his teammates, "Guess they're letting anyone into law school these days." Those words had stung, but Maya had channeled her pain into strength. She returned to the courtroom with renewed focus, dismantling Brandon's arguments with precision and poise. When the judge announced her as the winner of the competition, she looked directly at Brandon and smiled, letting her victory speak for itself. That moment had set the tone for Maya's career. She'd spent years fighting for justice, representing marginalized clients and holding powerful figures accountable. But as she rose through the ranks of the legal system, she often felt the weight of her responsibility. She knew her success was not just her own, it was a beacon for others who faced the same struggles. Back in the present, Maya's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her mentor, Judge Eleanor Harris, a retired judge who had been instrumental in Maya's journey. Eleanor saw the verdict on the news. "You did good, Maya. You always do. Proud of you." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. Eleanor had been the first person to believe in her when she doubted herself. She remembered the day she'd met Eleanor during a summer internship in law school. Maya had been struggling with imposter syndrome, questioning whether she belonged in the legal field. Eleanor had taken her under her wing, offering guidance and "You belong here, Maya," Eleanor had said one evening as they worked late in her chambers. "And don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. The world needs people like you, people who care about justice, not just the law." Those words had stayed with her, guiding her through every challenge, and tonight, as Maya sat in her quiet apartment, she felt Eleanor's pride like a warm embrace. The next morning, Maya returned to the courthouse for her usual docket of cases. The day after such a high-profile hearing could have felt anticlimactic, but Maya's focus never wavered. She greeted her staff with her usual warmth, ensuring everyone felt valued, a stark contrast to the toxic authority Daniels and Smith had displayed. During a brief recess, a young clerk approached her, nervously clutching a folder. "Judge Johnson, do you have a moment?" Maya looked up from her desk, offering a reassuring smile. "Of course, what's on your mind?" "I just wanted to say thank you," the clerk said, her voice trembling slightly, "for what you said yesterday. About justice and accountability. It meant a lot. To me, and I think, to a lot of people." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She placed a hand on the clerk's shoulder. "Thank you for saying that. Remember, you have a role in this too. Every choice we make, every action we take, it all matters." The clerk nodded, her expression brightening as she left the office. Maya sat back in her chair, her mentor's words echoing in her mind once again. "The world needs people like you." Later that evening, Maya decided to visit her parents. Her father, now retired, spent his days tending to a small vegetable garden in their backyard. Her mother, though slower with age, still volunteered at a local literacy program. They were her foundation, her compass, and her greatest supporters. When she arrived, her mother greeted her at the door with a warm hug. "There's my girl," she said, beaming. "We saw you on the news. You were amazing." Her father joined them, his proud smile making Maya's heart swell. "You showed them, Maya. You reminded them what justice really looks like." They spent the evening reminiscing, sharing stories from Maya's childhood and her journey to becoming a judge. As the conversation wound down, her mother took her hand. "Maya, you've always been strong, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. The fight isn't over, but you can't pour from an empty cup." Maya nodded, her mother's wisdom grounding her as it always had. She knew the fight for justice was far from over, but for tonight, she allowed herself to feel the weight of her parents' love and pride. As Maya drove home under the city's twinkling lights, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the past week had reminded her why she'd chosen this path, despite its challenges. She wasn't just a judge, she was a symbol of resilience, a voice for the voiceless, and a beacon of hope. And while the fight for equality and justice would continue, Maya knew she was ready for whatever lay ahead. The following day, the courthouse buzzed with whispers about the Daniels and Smith trial. Maya could feel the ripples of their verdict spreading beyond her courtroom, reaching corners of the justice system that rarely faced scrutiny. This was not just another case, it was a moment that challenged entrenched biases and systemic issues. Maya's morning began with a meeting of the Judicial Council, a gathering of judges, tasked with discussing reforms and community concerns. As she entered the room, a few judges greeted her warmly, while others offered curt nods, their expressions unreadable. She knew that not everyone in this room shared her commitment to equity, but she had long since learned to stand her ground. The council's chairperson, Judge Walters, cleared his throat as he called the meeting to order. "Before we begin our usual agenda, I believe Judge Johnson has something she'd like to share regarding yesterday's trial." Maya nodded, standing with calm confidence. "Thank you, Judge Walters. I wanted to address the broader implications of the Daniels and Smith case. While the trial focused on the actions of two officers, it also highlighted systemic issues within law enforcement and the judiciary." A murmur spread through the room, some judges shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Maya continued, undeterred. "The officer's behavior wasn't an isolated incident, it's part of a pattern, and as members of the judiciary we have a responsibility to ensure that our courts are a place where justice is truly blind, not influenced by prejudice or bias." Judge Cartwright, an older man with a reputation for conservative rulings, leaned forward, his voice skeptical. "Are you suggesting that the judiciary itself is complicit, Judge Johnson?" "I'm suggesting," Maya replied evenly, "that we are part of a system that requires accountability at every level. If we don't address these issues, we fail the people we are sworn to serve." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the table. Judge Walters cleared his throat again, his tone measured. "Thank you, Judge Johnson, your points are noted. Let's move on to the next item." As the meeting continued, Maya felt a mix of frustration and resolve. Change was never easy, but she was determined to push forward. One conversation, one case, one ruling at a time. Later that afternoon, Maya received an unexpected visitor in her chambers. Detective Renee Carter, a veteran officer with a reputation for integrity. Renee had been instrumental in gathering evidence against Daniels and Smith, and Maya respected her immensely. "Detective Carter," Maya said, gesturing for her to sit, "what brings you here?" Renee settled into the chair across from Maya's desk, her expression serious. "I just wanted to thank you, Judge Johnson. What you did yesterday, it meant a lot, not just to the community, but to officers like me who are trying to do the right thing." Maya leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Thank you, Detective, but the real credit goes to the people who came forward, who refused to stay silent. Without them, this case might not have made it to court." Renee nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Still, it takes courage to call out injustice, especially from the bench. I've seen too many cases where the system protects its own, no matter the cost." Maya's expression softened. "I know, and that's why we can't afford to stop now. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with people like you, people who are willing to stand up even when it's difficult." Renee smiled faintly, the tension in her face easing. "If you ever need support in your fight, Judge Johnson, you've got an ally in me." That evening, Maya attended a community forum organized by a local advocacy group. The event was held in a modest community center, its walls adorned with posters advocating for justice and equality. The room was packed with people from all walks of life: activists, residents, students, and even a few off-duty officers. Maya was invited to speak, and as she stepped onto the small stage, the room quieted. She looked out at the sea of faces, some hopeful, others weary, all united by a shared desire for change. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady but warm. "I stand before you not just as a judge but as someone who has faced the same struggles many of you have endured. I know what it's like to be underestimated, to be judged by the color of my skin rather than the content of my character." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd and Maya continued. "Yesterday's verdict was a step forward, but it's just one step. True justice requires more than a single case. It requires systemic change, accountability, and a commitment to seeing every person as deserving of dignity and respect." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I want you all to know that your voices matter. Your courage in speaking out, in demanding better, is what drives change. And I promise you this, as long as I wear this robe, I will do everything in my power to ensure that justice is not just a word, but a reality." The room erupted in applause, a standing ovation that brought tears to Maya's eyes. As she stepped off the stage, people approached her, sharing their stories, their gratitude, and their hopes for the future. It was moments like this that reminded Maya why she had chosen this path, despite its challenges. As the night wore on, Maya found herself sitting in the community center's quiet kitchen, sipping a cup of coffee. The organizer of the event, a young woman named Tasha, joined her, a notebook tucked under her arm. "You were incredible out there, Judge Johnson," Tasha said, her voice brimming with admiration. "You give people hope." Maya smiled, her gaze thoughtful. "Hope is powerful, Tasha, but it's action that turns hope into change. Keep organizing, keep speaking out. That's how we move forward." Tasha nodded, her determination evident. "We will, and thank you for everything." As Maya drove home later that night, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight for justice was far from over, but she wasn't alone in this battle. Together they were building a better future, one step at a time. The events surrounding the trial of officers Daniels and Smith sent ripples far beyond the walls of Maya Johnson's courtroom. It wasn't just the legal system or the police force that was impacted. The community itself began to stir, as though awakening to the possibility of change. The next morning, Maya sat at her breakfast table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow over her modest kitchen. She had always preferred simplicity, finding peace in the quiet moments of her day. But her phone buzzed relentlessly on the counter, a constant reminder of the world outside. She picked it up, scrolling through messages and emails. Many were from community members thanking her for her courage. Others were from activists and organizations wanting to collaborate on reforms. But one message stood out: a heartfelt letter from an anonymous police officer. The message read, "Judge Johnson, I've been an officer for over a decade and I've seen things I'm not proud of. Your verdict reminded me of why I joined the force in the first place: to serve and protect, not to intimidate and discriminate. I want to do better, and I'm not the only one. Thank you for holding us accountable and showing us what justice really means." Maya set her phone down, her heart heavy yet hopeful. The trial wasn't just about punishing two bad officers. It was a catalyst for introspection and change. She was beginning to see that justice wasn't just a destination. It was a journey, one that required every person to take a step forward. At Greenwood Police Department, the atmosphere was tense. Officers whispered in the halls, their conversations tinged with unease. Some were defensive, insisting the trial was an overreaction. Others were quietly reflective, questioning their own actions and biases. Detective Renee Carter, who had been instrumental in the case, stood at her desk reviewing files. She couldn't ignore the shift in her colleagues. For years she had felt like an outsider, fighting to maintain her integrity in a system that often rewarded silence. Now, for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Renee glanced up as Captain Harris entered the room, his expression serious. "Carter, can I see you in my office?" She followed him, her stomach knotting slightly. Harris gestured for her to sit, then leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "I've been watching you, Carter. You've always done good work, but your role in the Daniels and Smith case, it took guts." "Thank you, Captain," Renee replied cautiously. Harris nodded. "We're implementing mandatory racial sensitivity training for the entire department, and I want you to lead it." Renee's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But—" "No buts," Harris interrupted. "You've proven you care about doing things the right way. If anyone can help us change, it's you." Renee felt a surge of pride and responsibility. "I'll do it. But we need more than training, Captain. We need systemic change. Accountability, better recruitment practices, community engagement." Harris sighed, rubbing his temples. "One step at a time, Carter. Let's start with this and see where it takes us." Meanwhile, Daniels and Smith sat in their respective cells, awaiting the start of their sentences. Their arrogance had faded, replaced by a simmering resentment and, in Smith's case, a deep sense of regret. Smith stared at the ceiling of his cell, replaying the trial in his mind. Maya Johnson's words echoed in his ears. Your badge is a privilege, not a weapon. Use it to uplift, not oppress. He couldn't deny the truth in her statement, no matter how much it stung. Daniels, on the other hand, remained defiant. Sitting on the edge of his cot, he muttered under his breath, blaming everyone but himself for his predicament. This is a witch hunt, he grumbled to the guard passing by. People like her want to tear us down. The guard didn't respond, simply locking eyes with him for a moment before walking away. Daniel's words hung in the air, hollow and desperate. That evening, Maya attended a community forum held at the local library. The room was filled with residents, activists, and even a few police officers. The energy was a mix of hope and tension, as people from different walks of life came together to discuss the path forward. Maya sat on the panel alongside Renee Carter and several community leaders. When it was her turn to speak, she rose with her usual calm demeanor. Change doesn't happen overnight, she began, her voice steady. It requires uncomfortable conversations, accountability, and a commitment to do better. What happened in my courtroom wasn't just about two officers. It was about a system that allowed their actions to go unchecked. We can't fix it with one trial, but we can start. A young man in the audience raised his hand. Judge Johnson, how do we ensure this isn't just a moment but a movement? Maya paused, considering his question. By staying engaged, she said. By holding not just our officers and leaders accountable, but ourselves. Change starts in our homes, our neighborhoods, our... The room erupted in applause, and Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why she fought, for moments like these, where hope and action converged. Later that night, Maya returned home exhausted but fulfilled. She sat on her porch, looking out at the quiet street. The moon cast a gentle glow and the air was cool against her skin. Her phone buzzed with a call. It was her mentor, Judge Harriet Collins. I watched the forum online, Harriet said, her voice warm. You were incredible, Maya. Thank you, Harriet, Maya replied, but there's still so much work to do. There always will be, Harriet said, but you're making a difference. Never forget that. As Maya ended the call, she leaned back in her chair, her heart full. The road ahead was long, but she wasn't walking it alone. Together they were building a better world. One step, one trial, one conversation at a time. The weeks following the trial of Officers Daniels and Smith were transformative, not just for Maya Johnson but for the entire community. The verdict had sparked a movement, and while the path to change was fraught with resistance, there were signs of progress in small but significant ways. Maya sat at her desk, reviewing case files for the day. Her office, a modest but welcoming space, had become a hub for discussions about reform and justice. It wasn't uncommon for activists, community leaders, or even concerned citizens to drop by seeking advice or offering solutions. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she said. Detective Renee Carter stepped inside, her expression a mix of excitement and determination. "Judge Johnson, I thought you'd like to know, we've finalized the curriculum for the racial sensitivity training." Maya smiled warmly. "That's wonderful, Renee. What does it cover?" Renee handed her a folder. "It's comprehensive. We're focusing on implicit bias, community engagement, and the history of policing in marginalized communities. We're also including sessions where officers hear directly from residents about their experiences." Maya flipped through the materials, nodding in approval. "This is exactly what we need. Thank you for spearheading this." Renee hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Judge Johnson, I've been thinking. For the first session, it might be impactful if you shared your story. Hearing from you could really set the tone." Maya leaned back in her chair, considering the idea. She wasn't one to seek the spotlight, but she understood the power of personal testimony. "If it helps the cause, I'll do it." Renee's face lit up. "Thank you, I know it will make a difference." Meanwhile, the community forum Maya had attended continued to grow in popularity. It became a weekly event where residents, officers, and local leaders came together to discuss concerns, share ideas, and collaborate on solutions. The library meeting room, once half empty, was now filled to capacity. At one of these meetings, a young girl stood up to speak. Her voice trembled, but her words were powerful. "My brother was stopped by the police last year for no reason. It scared him so much that he doesn't want to leave the house anymore. I just want to live in a place where we don't have to be afraid." The room fell silent, the weight of her words pressing on everyone present. Maya, seated on the panel, felt a pang of sadness but also hope. The girl's courage to speak out was a sign of change. One of the officers in attendance, a man named Officer Hernandez, stood up. "I'm sorry that happened to your brother," he said sincerely. I can't change the past, but I want to be part of building a future where that doesn't happen again." The room erupted in applause and Maya felt a surge of optimism. These moments, though small, were steps in the right direction. At the Greenwood Police Department, the sensitivity training began in earnest. Officers were required to attend sessions led by Renee Carter and community leaders. The sessions weren't easy. Confronting biases and acknowledging systemic issues often sparked discomfort and defensiveness. During one session, Officer Smith sat quietly in the back, his arms crossed. He had been reluctant to participate, viewing it as a punishment rather than an opportunity. But as the session progressed, something shifted. A young black man named Marcus, a community volunteer, shared his story. I've been stopped by police more times than I can count," Marcus said. "I've been treated like a suspect just for walking down the street. But I'm here because I believe change is possible. I want to work with you, not against you." Smith found himself leaning forward, Marcus's words resonating in a way he hadn't expected. For the first time, he began to question his actions and the system he had been complicit in upholding. Back at the courthouse, Maya prepared for her appearance at the first sensitivity training session. She reviewed her notes, reflecting on the moments in her life that had shaped her understanding of justice and equality. When the day arrived, the training room was filled with officers, community leaders, and activists. Maya stood at the front, her calm yet commanding presence capturing the room's attention. "Thank you for being here," she began. "I know these conversations aren't easy, but they're necessary. I want to share a story with you. My story." She spoke about her childhood, growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce and prejudice was abundant. She recounted the challenges she faced as a law student and young lawyer, the doors that were closed to her simply because of her race, and she shared the moments of triumph, the people who believed in her, and the lessons she carried with her into the courtroom. "Justice isn't just about laws and verdicts," she said. "It's about how we treat one another, how we listen, and how we act. It's about recognizing the humanity in every person regardless of their background." The room was silent as Maya finished, her words hanging in the air like a challenge and a call to action. For some, her story was a revelation. For others, it was a reminder of why they had joined the force in the first place. As Maya left the session, she was approached by Officer Hernandez. "Judge Johnson," he said, "your story really hit home. I joined the force to make a difference, but somewhere along the way I lost sight of that. I want to do better." Maya placed a hand on his shoulder, acknowledging that is the first step. Change starts with individuals like you. That evening, Maya returned home, feeling a mix of exhaustion and fulfillment. She sat on her porch watching the stars twinkle above. The journey was far from over, but the seeds of change had been planted. She thought of her mentor, Harriet Collins, who had once told her, "Every step forward, no matter how small, matters." Maya smiled, knowing that those steps were adding up, paving the way for a brighter future. The sun rose over the city, casting warm light across its streets and buildings, illuminating the transformations taking place in its heart. Maya Johnson stood at her office window, sipping coffee as she reflected on the events of recent weeks. The courtroom drama, the sensitivity training sessions, and the growing community dialogues had all begun to chip away at the barriers of prejudice and misunderstanding. Today was a particularly special day. Maya had been invited to speak at a citywide event organized to celebrate justice reform and community healing. The event would bring together police officers, community leaders, activists, and citizens to reflect on how far they'd come and what work still lay ahead. As Maya arrived at the park where the event was being held, she was greeted by a bustling crowd. Stalls were set up with information about local initiatives, food trucks filled the air with delicious aromas, and children laughed as they played on the grass. It was a scene of unity and hope, a stark contrast to the tension and division that had defined the city just months earlier. As a result, Renee Carter waved her over. "Judge Johnson, I saved you a spot near the stage." Maya smiled and joined her, taking in the sight of officers mingling with residents, shaking hands and engaging in genuine conversation. Among them, she noticed Officer Smith standing near one of the stalls, listening intently as a young black woman explained a new mentoring program for at-risk youth. Renee followed her gaze and grinned. "Smith's been showing up to every training session and community event. I think he's finally starting to get it." Maya nodded. "That's what change looks like. Slow, steady, but real." When it was time for her speech, Maya approached the stage with quiet confidence. The audience fell silent as she took the microphone, her presence commanding respect. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. Today we stand together not as separate groups divided by uniforms, titles, or backgrounds, but as a community united by a shared goal: justice, fairness, and equality." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Not long ago I experienced firsthand the pain of prejudice and the abuse of power, but what I also witnessed was the power of accountability and the possibility of redemption. This city has shown me that while we may stumble, we are capable of standing up, learning, and doing better." Maya spoke of her journey, weaving in stories of resilience, the lessons her mentor had imparted, and the hope she felt for the future. She emphasized the importance of empathy, urging everyone to look beyond appearances and assumptions, to truly see the humanity in one another. "Our work isn't done," she concluded, "but every step we take brings us closer to a brighter tomorrow. Let's keep walking that path together." The crowd erupted into applause, some standing ovation. Maya scanned the audience, her eyes landing on familiar faces: Renee, Marcus, Officer Hernandez, and even Officer Smith, who clapped along with the rest. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing her words had resonated. After the speech, Maya mingled with the attendees, listening to their thoughts and ideas. A young boy approached her, holding a piece of paper. "Judge Johnson, can I get your autograph?" he asked shyly. Maya chuckled and crouched down to his level. "Of course, what's your name?" "Jordan," he replied, his eyes shining with admiration. "When I grow up, I want to be a judge like you." Maya felt her heart swell. "You can be anything you want, Jordan. Just remember to always stand up for what's right." As she signed the paper, she glanced at Jordan's parents, who were beaming with pride. It was moments like these that reminded her why she had chosen this path. Later in the day, Maya found herself standing near Officer Smith, who was nervously adjusting his tie. He hesitated before speaking. "Judge Johnson, I just wanted to say, thank you." "For what?" Maya asked, genuinely curious. "For holding me accountable," he said, his voice tinged with remorse. "At first I resented it. I thought you were out to ruin me, but now I see that you gave me a chance to change, and I want you to know, I'm going to make the most of it." Maya studied him for a moment, then extended her hand. "It's never too late to do the right thing, Officer Smith. Keep moving forward." He shook her hand firmly, a sense of determination in his eyes. As the event wound down, Maya found a quiet spot under a tree to reflect. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Renee joined her, handing her a cup of lemonade. "Not bad for a city that was on the brink a few months ago, huh?" Renee said, gesturing to the dispersing crowd. "Not bad at all," Maya replied, a content smile on her face. "But we still have work to do." Renee nodded. "We always will, but thanks to you we're on the right track." That evening, as Maya returned home, she found herself thinking about her mentor, Harriet Collins. She retrieved a worn notebook from her bookshelf, a collection of quotes and advice Harriet had given her over the years. One line stood out: "Justice isn't a destination, Maya, it's a journey, and every step you take matters." Maya closed the notebook and set it aside, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The city had taken a big step forward, but the journey was far from over, and she was ready for whatever came next. As she sat on her porch, watching the stars appear one by one, Maya whispered to herself, "We're not done yet, but we're getting there." And with that, she allowed herself a moment of peace, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference. What are your thoughts on Maya's journey? How would you have handled the challenges she faced? Share your perspective comments below. If this story inspired you, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button to join us for more powerful stories like this one. I also made a playlist, The Best Stories for You, so do check out it here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.